Six healthcare technology companies have gained between 75 and 200% in the last quarter. Now, we've been monitoring this thematic since back in August, and that's when we were sharing this list, what's called the 30/30 list, with members every Thursday, and they see those thematics progress as we're seeing the new leaders emerge. And that's exactly what this list is for. You can see it on screen. It's called the 30/30 list. Think of those that already have momentum, so got momentum. That's the left-hand side. That's easy to spot. They're the best performers. And we've got a whole lot of metrics for that. That's all these colorful lines and charts that are completely sortable in that way. But on the right-hand side is what we're talking about today. And this is where we identify the emerging themes. What's set to take over in the market? What's going to come up next? That's the launchpad, gaining momentum. So on the right-hand side, we can see a name like Race Oncology, which is a beautiful chart, but actually didn't make the top 6 of what we're going to talk about today. How do we identify the clusters within this list of launchpad? So if we imagine that we're looking at a forest, and every single company on the ASX is an individual tree itself. So we've got the biggest and tallest and strongest, they are the best performers. They're actually the companies here on the left. But if we want to see those that are gaining ground, those that are shooting up the most, well, we're not going to see it because they're on the forest floor and they're barely moving. That's what we see in the launchpad. But imagine we can clear everything else, remove all the other companies, and just look at one thematic at a time. Now, we've got 380 of them, so there's a lot of maths to do there, but zero in on one thematic at a time. And let's talk about healthcare, diagnostic equipment, whichever way you want to slice and dice it. We zero in on those and see the behaviors of those companies. And what happens if they're not shooting the lights out, they're not running up with huge gains, but what if collectively they're all growing together? That's what we're talking about with the thematic that's lighting up the launchpad, and that's the opportunity or the clusters that we're talking about. So when we look at these companies, that's what we want to be identifying. And what happened back in August was what we saw 4DX get the injection, $10 million loan from Pro Medicus. That started this movement and started the bubbling along. In fact, actually it started before then, but that's the easiest catalyst that most people will be familiar with. So let's move into these companies and understand what has happened in the last quarter and how that fits in with this thematic and that cluster that all fits together. So we've got DVL, which is in 6th place, like a solid, beautiful chart. We're looking at 342% rise since the start of July. They all sort of lit up in July, so we've picked that as an easy marker to show on the charts. We've got a massive move, 1.5 cents to 45 cents, a 300% gain, creates a high tight flag and goes on. We've got a whole tutorial on the high tight flags if you want. But the point with DVL is that they've had a 75% gain to the quarter to date, 157% rise over the year, and their select medical partnership. So they've got over 1,300 US rehabilitation centers. So they provide RRAM technology, which is 9 patent families exclusive worldwide. They're working with blue chip clients including BHP, Woolworths, Caterpillar, and they use wearable biometrics for artificial intelligence, and that's creating commercialization at scale with the AI being able to leverage up at that. So that's a workplace safety kind of thing. Then we move into 5th place. So TRI. This is another great chart with almost 400% gains from these July lows. Explosive, massive gain up. So what we're looking at is a change of character, a buyable gap up, and we're looking at, well, the most explosive volume that it's had in over 12 months. Harder one to trade, but let's understand it from how it fits into the thematic side of things. 95% gain, 36% over the year, so it does actually tell it came down into that pop, fair enough. What we're looking at here with this company, mental health screening via wearables. So they're also attaching sleep data into it, and then they have decent market penetration, corporate wellness positioning, and they're in a slightly different space, but it is still AI-driven mental health diagnostics in what is a multi-billion-dollar wellness spending market, which we all get endless advertising towards. 4th place, we move into ILA. Again, you're seeing 289% rise from these July movements. So yes, that is a high and tight flag. It's come out of a bit of a base. You can say a cup and handle if you will for August, and the handle here coming into September, breaks over 52-week highs and shoots up into creating a rise from 22 cents to well over 44 cents. We come from the base of the flagpole here, well and truly over 100% rise in the high and tight flag. Again, getting into the details of the charting side of things. But we understand the company is having 100% rise over the quarter, 121% over the year. Currently, their phase 2As have positive dengue fever results. Phase 2B, well, that commenced in January this year, and we're set to get the first half 2025 results imminently. It's going to address 400 million annual dengue fever injections is the addressable market we're looking at here. $13.8 billion global cost. So that clinical validation, well, yes, if they can get these results through, that really does push it along. So clinical results, everything with biotech. LDX is third place. All right, 828% gain. Sounds like a story tale, but it has jumped up. You see the huge volume, viable gap up, huge explosive volume, change of character, and then it resets itself, holds most of the gain, breaks through its 52-week high and gets on. It does that 52-week high breakout with solid volume, critical component when we want to be getting onto a momentum leader. Nonetheless, it's rallied up. Yes, it's more than 100% rise, 100% club, high tight flag, so on. Whole trading education series if you want to drill down into those details. But these are the companies that are coming through in the 30/30 list for members as they get to look at the individual opportunities. Yes, we've talked about the themes every week on the Friday videos, but when we look at the likes of AYA, we can see another 500% gain since it's part of in July. They do have another viable gap up into the 21st of August. Good volume, solid rise, and I love this chart. It's still powering on. It's been holding the 10-day moving average. Might breach it today, we'll see. But AYA, when we understand this company, actually we jumped on Luminous Diagnostics, but AYA we've got in front of us, 131% gain on the quarter, 205% for the year. They had a $60 million capital raise from sophisticated investors, $2.05 per share, now trading significantly higher than that. So they're currently a artificial intelligence diagnostic treatment. Well, it's a huge cause of death across the world. So again, large addressable market and getting institutional backing with that recent placement. Luminous Diagnostics, they actually had 300% year-on-year growth in their revenue, product revenue. So that commercial traction really gives that validation. That's what we're looking to see in this biotech space, is to show that they've proven up their market, their product fit, the adaptation or penetration of the market, being able to get distribution. They're all key hurdles in this space. And one that's done it really well with a solid chart is 4DX. So what we see here, yes, 953% rise. Huge movement. It's had many plays in here. It did power on through, good solid volume, created a high tight flag, actually broke down and then reversed. That's the spring formation that we look at. And then, well, it's been still volatile. If we understand market leaders and monster stocks, yeah, it can still actually keep pushing through. So this is actually the leader and what has been getting the most amount of news and is the easiest to understand. We had ProMedicus, one of Australia's best performing companies of the last decade. They then tipped in, or they opened up their wallets for a $10 million loan, strategic loan. That was back in July. And what that did, that signals that this is more important than any analyst report that we're going to see, because 4DX get an investment from ProMedicus, one of their peers in the same sort of industry space. Who knows that market better than an industry peer or a competitor? It's better than any analyst sitting in an office over in Sydney, Melbourne, or Wall Street. The industry knows best. They're sitting there at the coalface day to day, zeroing in on their specifics. So if they're willing to invest their own money, ProMedicus, into a competitor or another company's technology to advance that company, that speaks volumes, because that's not only just institutional investment and people saying, I believe in this story. It's actually somebody, an expert in this space who has had phenomenal success recently saying, I believe in that company. So think of Apple opening their wallet for a specific technology. Yeah, actually, we know this is going to go ahead and we're willing to back it. So that's the kind of power that we see with the institutional investment and deployment of capital. How do we do that? How does this come back to the thematic side of things? Okay, sometimes when you see this money getting trickling in, it doesn't always just show up with a shootout like this with huge gap up in volume. It can actually look more like this, where it's just bubbling along and getting a little bit of confidence. That's hard to spot on the market when you're looking at a 10,000 foot view of a forest and all these massive trees. But if we're able to move that away and just look at the individual companies within that one thematic themselves, and then assess those companies really tightly to see, hang on a second, there's a price floor, not in just one or two companies, but 6 or 7 of them. They're on the launch pad. That tells us we've got to zero in and focus on it, because if we can see setups, if we see good volume movements, if we see specific volume setups like VCPs, coils, compressions, that kind of thing, then we know we've really got to zero on this theme. And when there's a breakout, we're getting to that really hard and fast. That's how we use it. That's what we do. And with members, they get access to it. So we get the 30/30 list, but then they're also able to filter those opportunities that we're talking about. We're talking about volume breakouts. We're talking about coils and compressions. Personally, this one here is my favorite. I love to look at the coils every single day. because I'm across the themes that we're talking about with members on Fridays. Everyone else gets the videos on Fridays as well. And if I can see a company in here that's got a coil, that's where my ears prick up. That goes straight to my watch list. I set up alerts and that's how I trade it. So if you want to be identifying these themes, whether it's healthcare or the next leading theme, you can click join below. You'll get access to all of these reports. You get the 30/30 list on the Thursday before everyone else gets it on Friday, or at least part of the list they get, and you can filter through this. If not, then click on the right hand side and we'll go through in more detail how to actually identify thematics and what we do with the 30/30 list.